Thank you all for being here today. This is a really fun and important part of family history, doing interviews of our relatives or of friends or others who have had wonderful life experiences, which really, when you think about it, everyone has. So a lot of people are a little nervous about doing family history interviews. So I'm going to give you some ideas of how to do them and why you don't need to be nervous about it. Just jump right in and take on this wonderful experience of interviewing someone about his or her life. So the first thing I'd like to address is why bother to do this? Why is it something that actually is important? And there are quite a few reasons. One of them is to preserve people's voices. I was so delighted a few months ago when I was digitizing some video and audio tapes that my dad had, when it turned out that one of the audio tapes happened to be my grandfather talking about his youth. And it brought me to tears to hear his wonderful voice again. I had not heard his voice since he passed away in 1992. So it was a great thing for me and a great surprise. And I really loved that. And I wish that I had done more with him myself when I was a lot younger. But so people's voices are important, not just their vocal voice, but also the voice of their personality, the voice of who they were, their memories, and the kinds of things that they did and enjoyed and loved. Also, they can pass down oral traditions. If you think about it, most of the stories that we have from the ancient world, of course, they were not passed down in written form. A good many of those, originally at least, were passed down by oral telling of the stories. And some of them actually, of course, are not true stories, but you can bet that a lot of the things that people talked about and told stories about in the olden days were their own personal memories, maybe somewhat enhanced, of course, but that's the kind of thing that we really need to know and need to understand and remember, those stories that are family stories, and some of them may or may not be true, but that's okay. They're fun and they can be lost if they're not documented. Another thing that you can use as research, really. So if you're the person who likes to write narrations and life histories, which I've talked about in several other videos, so you can always look those up. These can give you a springboard for writing those life histories and narrations, and it makes it a lot easier because you'll actually have the person's style of speaking and so on that you can put into the narration without feeling like you're not being authentic. Another thing that's really, really great is bridging the generations with these. As I said, I was happy to hear my grandpa's voice again, and my children and grandchildren have never heard his voice. So to have that tape and be able to share it with them so that they can hear how someone who was born in 1896 spoke and the things that he did in his youth is really great, and gives them some background and someone that they can kind of look to and think that there were interesting and wonderful things about his life. As a researcher, again, sometimes you'll get dates and places and things that you didn't know before when you talk to someone that they might not just remember or don't want to write down, and they'll tell you the name of their school or something like that, or where their mother was born. You might not know those otherwise because maybe they wouldn't be happy to write it down or whatever. And then the other thing that you can use it for is to understand what influenced that person's life to be the kind of person that he or she is. My mother used to tell me a lot of stories about how she grew up and her grandmothers. And knowing those stories and understanding, and I knew my great-grandmothers a little bit, it was really helpful for me to understand who she was and where she became the kind of person that she was. And of course, it will give you a lot of love, a lot of caring, a lot of joy, and a lot of understanding if you can do these interviews. So I'm a real fan of them. When we went to Africa to live the last time, we went on a mission for our church, and we were tasked with visiting and taking oral histories of some of the people that we met there. And some of them we had known before because we lived in Africa in the same place before in the 1990s. And it was such a joy to us to be able to talk to them and record their memories of their early times in our church, and also to get an idea of what they'd done since that in their lives and how things really became wonderful for them or difficult for them. In many cases, they had a lot of difficulties, but they could share those things with us and share them with other people because we did record them. One thing I would like to say is you can even change the person's life that you are interviewing. You don't have to interview old people necessarily. You can interview young people. You can change their lives because I'll just briefly tell you a little story. As we were there in Africa, we interviewed one gentleman whom we knew his brother very, very well. He was our dear, dear friend. We didn't know him very well, but we had understood from his brother that he had had a lot of real problems in the last 30 years and had really gone downhill in many, many ways. And so when we had this interview with him, we talked to him and we reminded him of some of the things and asked him to tell us about some of the things that had happened to him when he was younger that had had an influence in his life. And he opened up and he told us some of these things and how much he loved certain aspects of his life as a young man. And a few weeks later, we had the privilege of meeting him one more time again. And he threw his arms around my husband and me. And he said, thank you so much for that. It made me realize what I had left and what I had lost. And I decided from that day that we talked that I would reshape my life and I would try to only do good things and be good and help other people. And he went out and touched the lives of many young men who had been having a lot of problems in their lives because they had been fighting against the government in a militia. This was in Africa, so you can imagine sometimes there's unrest. And he brought those young men back into society and helped them to change their lives as well. So you never know what your influence is going to be on other people in bringing their memories back to the front. So a big question a lot of people have is, okay, how do I actually just like get the interview started? How do I get it set up? How can I get somebody to do it for me? And with caring, tact, and kindness, those are just the three words that you really need: caring, tact, and kindness. So the first step is to choose who you want to use. And if it's your first interview, you've never done one before, I would be careful and choose your interview carefully. The person that you're going to interview should be someone who you feel comfortable with and who feels comfortable with you, and someone that you know is not like super shy or doesn't like to be recorded, or, just somebody who you feel like, okay, I can do this with this person because they'll be all right. Sometimes it's good to find people who may not have been interviewed before. Like if you've had other people interview your grandma, for example, maybe you might want to start with someone else who hasn't necessarily shared the story and come back to her later. The important thing when you're doing this is to talk to them about what you want to do, explain exactly what you want to do. Don't scare them off by, making them feel like they're in the spotlight or anything like that. Just tell them, you've told me some stories, Grandma, and I'd really, really like to have you put them, in a more structured form so that I can type them out for you and you can have them to read yourself. Whatever makes you more comfortable and them more comfortable with the situation. And the last thing is be thoughtful about your scheduling and make sure that if you're going to do interviews, you can do more than one. So you don't want to, especially with older people, I would suggest half an hour, 20 to 45 minutes is plenty, plenty, plenty of time. If you go longer than that, sometimes they'll just start to ramble and go back over other things that they've already said. So schedule your interview with care, so that you can make sure that they aren't getting tired, so that they don't feel like they have to hurry. So if you say, well, we're going to only take 15 minutes, then they're going to feel like they have to hurry. So make it at least a half an hour is a good time. An hour if there's someone who you feel like can go that long. You can also always schedule on Zoom if a person is comfortable with a video call or FaceTime or any of those kinds of things. Phone even works well. You can record off your phone. So there's lots of different ways to do it. You don't have to be in person. Now, we're going to get into the nitty-gritty. So how do I actually do the interview? It's pretty important in certain ways to do it in a certain way, because I've had people tell me, and in fact, somebody just the other day, we were listening to an interview in our training meeting, and one of the members of who was there afterwards said to me, "Oh, you couldn't hear very well because there were people talking in the background and other things going on." So this is why it's important to kind of structure it. All right, so I'm going to show you how to do that. So as I was saying, make it comfortable. Okay, so make it be a comfortable environment. Sometimes you can do it on the fly if you think, oh, I got to get this story right now, and she's telling it to me in the car. Okay, record whenever it's appropriate to record if you have the permission. But if you're going to do an actual interview with actual questions, then you're going to need to have a quiet, comfortable environment with minimal distractions. You don't want people out in the kitchen banging around pans and things like that. Find a place that's comfortable seating so that you aren't squirming around and they're not getting tired. Always ask permission to record beforehand, and make sure that your tech, whatever tech you're going to be using, whether it's your phone or a recording machine or video camera or whatever it is you're using, make sure that you test that ahead of time so that you don't lose it, because you can then maybe recall what they said, but it's not quite the same, is it, as actually having the recording. Okay, so speaking of that, the next thing is to make sure you bring the right tools. Okay, so if they will let you, and some people do not want to be recorded, which is unfortunate, but if they will let you record them, it's best to record them on a device, whether it's your computer, a laptop, whatever, your telephone. There are certain recording things that you can actually buy with a mic and headphones, that kind of stuff. You don't need to get that fancy. Just use your phone if you don't have anything else. Make sure you ask the permission, as I've said before. This is actually really important because you really don't want somebody to get very upset with you when they find out that you recorded something that maybe they didn't want recorded. Also, even if you're not going to write anything down, bring writing materials just in case something happens to your tech or whatever, or you just want to take notes so that you can have another experience with them later about things that you maybe want to further explore. I would suggest very strongly that you have, if not printed, at least write out some topics that you want, or some printed questions that you want, type them out, or some prompts that you would like to ask them questions about. If you just start an open-ended conversation, it's fine. It works out okay, but it usually doesn't have a purpose. What are you trying to do in this interview? And if you have printed questions or written out things, then your goals that you have and the goals that they have will be met more clearly. Sometimes it's a good idea, especially with older people, to bring photos or something, an heirloom that you might have that might jog their memories. I know I'm getting older myself, and sometimes I just can't remember details. But if you see a photo of something, it might bring back, oh yeah, my mother could remember her art teacher's name. And what jogged that was looking at a painting that she had done herself later in her life. And that brought that whole thing back to her of her junior high school experience with art. He was the one who got her first started into art. So anything visual or sometimes like even a song can do that. Songs are really good at sparking memories, or even an odor can do that sometimes. Test your tech ahead of time. Again, make sure that if you're going to use any kind of technology that it's going to work. Okay, I'm going to give you some hints here. This is going to be on the handout, so you can get these on your own through the library's website. But these are some apps for oral interviews. There are quite a few. These, I don't think this is all of them. These are just kind of the best that I know of. And some of them are free. Some of them you can have like a free trial, and then if you like it, you can go on to a paid plan. And then these are the best apps for video interviews. You can record Zoom meetings anytime. The problem with Zoom is if you don't have a paid account with Zoom, then they'll only let you go for about 40 minutes. So you need to have a shorter interview if you're a person who likes to do a little bit longer. But those are just some ideas for the best apps that you can find. Now, when you're doing the interview, these are kind of just some general principles that I'm going to give you. Number one, stay calm. It doesn't matter. Even if you're talking to your mom and all of a sudden she tells you your dad's not your dad or something like that, just stay calm. Just stay calm. Do your very, very best not to get upset at anything that gets said, okay? You can always delete things. You can edit the video, you can edit the audio. If it's something that you don't think your mom should have told you, like about her youth, that you really even wish she hadn't told you, or whatever person you're talking to. But if you get upset, then they'll get upset, and then your interview will tank, and you will probably never be able to talk to them again about things. Okay, so just stay calm. That is the number one thing. Secondly is listen. Okay, do not interrupt. Okay, but listen actively and maybe make a little note of a follow-up question as they're talking, but don't interrupt with a new question until they're done pretty much with the question that you asked them and answering that one. It's okay if they pause. It's okay if you pause and just think about what they've said, or they can just think about what they're talking about. You don't have to go 100 miles an hour. You can always reschedule and make another recording. And look at the person. Look them in the eyes whenever it seems comfortable for you and them. Talk with them genuinely and lovingly and caringly and kindly. Just have a good relationship while you're doing this, because my goal in doing these kind of interviews is to impart joy. Okay, so I do not want to make anyone uncomfortable, and I do not want to make anyone feel like I have left them in any judging way. I don't want them to think, oh, she thinks I've done this or that's bad. So don't do that either. Just make sure they're happy. Ask your easiest questions first. If you want to ask a little deeper questions, that's fine if you feel that it's something that is appropriate. But save those for after your interview is a little bit further in and you both feel more comfortable about opening up. Again, don't interrupt. This is really important. As little as possible, don't interrupt. And don't make, like, if they're forgetting something, don't necessarily jump in and tell them what they're forgetting. Okay, give them a chance to remember something, and without you jumping in and telling them what they're supposed to remember. If you need to follow up your interview, go right ahead if they would like to do that. If they don't want to, don't push them. Always be very gentle. Sometimes people's experiences, and sometimes it's things that you would not even think would be something that would upset or worry them. It's surprising how people feel about things that you might think to yourself, what? That's not a big deal. Why are you upset about that? But for them, if it's a big deal, it's a big deal. So be gentle with people and don't push and don't pry. If they don't answer a question, the way you want it answered, or they don't give you an answer that you think is complete, it's possible they don't want to. So don't pry. That's not fair. And it just makes people feel uncomfortable. And it's not really going to help you much, honestly, in your family history. And last of all, show love, show understanding, give them a joyful experience and something that will help them to kind of feel good about themselves and about you. So some people are nervous about doing these interviews. So I'm going to tell you a few things you can do to overcome that nervousness and build your confidence. First of all, prep with purpose. If you know what you're doing, you'll feel a little bit less anxious about it. So know what goal you have. What did you want to really learn or understand during this interview? Always have a goal. Always have a goal. Craft an outline that's fairly flexible so you don't have to make sure that you follow every bullet point or ask every single question. Make it flexible. And then you can actually practice the questions aloud so that you can hear. Now, if I say this question this way, how are they going to feel about it? Is it going to make them want to crawl in a hole, or is it going to bring out some new feelings or ideas that they might not have thought about? So just think about that. And it will also help you to make it flow a little more naturally so that you don't sound like you're stilted as you're asking the questions. Secondly, shift your mindset. Okay, so don't be anxious, be excited. Don't focus on what you're doing. Focus on them. Focus on what the person is doing and what they're saying and how they feel and what kinds of things you're bringing up in their minds. And don't expect perfection on your part and don't expect perfection on their part. You can just flub a question or make an awkward pause. It won't ruin your interview. And in fact, if you make it sound mechanical or machine-like, then nobody's going to be interested in it, and it might not even be fun for you or the person that you're interviewing if you sound like a robot. And last of all, use your physical anchors. I don't know if any of you are anxious people, but this is something I love to do, and that is control my breathing. And I do yoga breathing. We call them box breaths. You breathe in 4, you hold for 4, you exhale 4, and then you hold for 4. So just any kind of thing like that where you're controlling your breathing before you start. I don't think you need to do it in the middle of your interview unless you're really anxious. But just control your breathing before you start. Have nice things nearby, like, a cup of cocoa, or make sure you have your written card there that tells you what prompts you're going to use. Hold a pen or a fidget thing if you need to. One thing that's really cool is to start with a really fun icebreaker, like, have you ever been told you look like someone famous? And that kind of, they'll laugh and kind of give you maybe a funny little opening that will make things more comfortable for everybody. Always thank them when you start. Thank you for taking the time to visit with me today. I really am excited to hear about your youth and things that I asked you about in the questions I sent you. I would send questions beforehand to not everyone, but to a lot of the people that so they have time to think about things rather than just jumping on them with them. Just be casual and just have fun. Okay, so after the recording is finished, save your recording and your notes with at least 2 storage options. Okay, so you need to save them on an outside of your computer, on the cloud, or in your computer and on a thumb drive or a hard disk, whatever it is that you have. But I would never save things with just one option on storage because it will possibly get corrupted or lost. So we don't want to do that. The other thing you should possibly do is, in certain things, you can make transcripts. You can make them with an AI computer program. like Otter AI, which is one that you can use Descriptor. MS Word will even make a transcript of an audio recording. Or you can just type it out or write it by hand, which is what people always used to do. Send them a thank you note or a gift when you're done with all your interviews. And if you make a transcript, then give them a copy. And if you didn't, then give them at least a copy of the tape. And maybe even if they say it's okay, you can give it to one of their relatives or their children or whatever to share. You can put pieces of it on Family Search, and some other programs let you put in longer videos and longer audio recordings. So check into that as well. And then you can use it for other things. You can just use it for your family history. So as I was saying, you can take key information that they give you and cross-reference that information with other facts that you already know and see how it adds up. Because sometimes what's on paper may not be exactly right. And sometimes what's in a person's brain may not be exactly right. So the information may not be the same. So kind of cross-reference things, make sure that facts are facts. And you can sometimes find new facts and find new paths to go down to, in your family history, to find new people. The person might give you a name or a date or a place or a relationship that you didn't know about. Let me give you an example. My grandmother, she had a great aunt who was married once and then divorced. And then she remarried another man who we didn't know his name. And I was talking with my grandmother, and she was telling me about her family. And she mentioned this aunt. And she told me, I think his name was such and such, but I'm not sure. So I wrote it down as she said it. And later, after the interview, I was able to actually find him and find the son from her first marriage, who had actually, after she died, when she died really, really young, her son stayed with his stepfather in California. And I found him and I found her husband, and I was able to find all the information about them. And he never married. Her son never married. So it was a really wonderful miracle to me that I was able to find that just from that little, and the name was wrong. She didn't give it to me. It wasn't the correct name, but just from the way she said it, I was able to figure out from different spellings what it might be. And so I was able to find him. It was wonderful. You can put it in a book with photos, heirlooms. Like if you have an heirloom, you could put a little description of what they said in their interview with the heirloom for other people to have an idea of what it was. You can put it in documents as a primary source, because sometimes, like I say, that it may not be correct completely, like in with dates or something like that. But when a person tells you something that happened to them, that is a primary source, and you kind of have to trust it. The other thing you can do is take it and make it into a narrative, either by doing what I've talked about in other places and just writing it out as a third person narrative. This is what happened, or just like I said, transcribing that. You can make it into a biographical sketch. You can make it into a story. You can even turn it into a full-fledged life history if it's that long. Use quotes from it if you are writing a narrative. You can structure a story around it, just around one little thing that they tell you, and just flesh it out a little bit and make it into an actual story. One thing that's really cool is to edit clips for reunions or tribute videos. That's a really neat thing. For my mom, we had a person, we didn't do it ourselves, but we had a person make a tribute video for us. And it was really great in her funeral. It was just really beautiful. And then we got to keep it for ourselves. And last of all, to foster connections with your children, your grandchildren, and other relatives. Share the information, share the story, share the tape, so that their values, their lessons, their humor, their experiences won't get lost. And that legacy that they left for your family will be there for hopefully forever, that someone will save it forever and ever and ever. So on the next slide, these are just some extra links that give you actually questions that you can ask. I have a really great box of it's actually a game. We've done this in our family reunions. It's really fun, of questions. It's Pando. You can look that up. They have different games that have questions that you can ask each other. But these four are just some examples of family history questions and how to conduct family history interviews. Mainly what's in them is pretty much what I've said, but you might find something new or something that speaks to you. So you can find this on the PDF that I'm going to send, that will be in the Family History Library archive. So have fun, learn a lot, which you will. You will be so happy to learn certain things, and some things will make you cry, and some things will just make you laugh, and some things will just open your eyes and you'll go, whoa, really? And so there'll be lots of interesting and fun things that you're going to learn. So I hope you do have a great experience doing this, and do it with as many people as you can. Once you get the hang of it, it's a terrific way to share the love.